Hey, how's it going, guys? 6 days left to do. Let's get going. 6 days, two approaches, and a lot of confusion. Right, so we'll start with Milgram, who's social psychology. It was 1963, the study was done in, and it was basically looking at the effects of, I think it's authority on obedience, basically. So what was done was they published an advert in a local New Haven newspaper to get respondents on an experiment into memory was what they claimed it was, and they offered a fee of $4.50 that they would pay two people to take part. The respondents were 40 males from 20 to 50 with a variety of professions or male clerks, that kind of stuff. And then they'd have these men would come in, they'd be deceived by the suggestion that they could have ended up as either a teacher or a student. And when they pick things out of the house, most slips say teacher, so that there's no way it's rigged so that the participant can't be a learner. And the learner is in on he's a Confederate basically. Uh, so they take the learner, quote unquote, to the room and strap him into what appears to be similar to an electric chair, and then they take the teacher into the next room uh, and reveal to him a shock generator that has a variety of switches ranging from 15 to 150 volts in 15-volt intervals. That means I can't remember how many switches there were. 30 switches, 15-volt increment, and they were grouped into 4 switches per group, from slight shock up to severe danger, severe shock. And then the last couple were just XXX, just like. But so, in order to convince the teacher that the machine was real, they sort of plugged him into it. Well, they didn't plug him into it. They sort of just given a sample shock from a battery wired to the generator of 45 volts, which would have been the third switch along, which was just a bit of a to convince them that it was a real generator, it was functional. Anyway, so then they go through, and the victim keeps getting these questions wrong because they're given sets of words. It's a word association idea where they have to learn the word pairing. And if they get it wrong, they get an electric shock. If they get it wrong again, it moves up an increment and it's an electric shock, and so on for each time they get it wrong. This was perfectly fine. He would answer wrong 3 times to every one correct time on average. There would be no vocal protest from the learner, who wasn't really strapped in, just to remind you, he's just there in the room next door. Until shock level 300 was reached. 300 volts is a lot of electricity, just to remind you, when the learner started pounding on the wall. Which could be heard by the teacher, of course. At 3:15, the learner's pounding was repeated, and then above that nothing happens, just silence. If the teacher wanted to stop, they would be prodded with "please continue" or "please go on" was the initial prod. The second prod would be "the experiment requires that you continue." The third prod was that "it is absolutely essential that you continue." And prod 4 was "you have no other choice, you must go on." Now, for an experiment where they're allowed to withdraw, this is quite a strange idea of telling them they can't withdraw. But yeah. They would give answers in suitable contexts, like "although the shock may be painful, there is no permanent tissue damage, so please go on," and "whether the learner likes it or not, whether the learner likes it or not, you must go on until they've learned all the word pairs correctly, so please go on." Anyway, afterwards, the participants would be interviewed, and then they would be allowed to meet the learner to just sort of sort out any psychological harm that might have been inflicted. Uh, in terms of findings, they got really tense. The teachers tend to get really tense, but they didn't stop. Only 5 stopped at 300 volts, 4 stopped at 315 volts, 2 stopped at 330 volts, and 1 stopped at each of 345, 360, and 375. The rest, the other 26 participants, went all the way to the final switch. They showed nervous laughter, a couple went into fits, uh, seizures, nervous laughter, trembling, sweating, groaning, digging their fingernails into their own arms and flesh. Um, anyway, so Milgram concluded from this that, yeah, obedience was surprising. That the 14 psychology students were actually 14 university students rather were surveyed before the experiment started for the sake of just checking, and they believe that only 3% of the participants would go all the way to the final shot, when in reality it was over 50%, which is wasn't expected. Uh, so yeah, kind of that. That's over.